Good evening, everyone. I am Lacan Uhay Dorado Alegre from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. And welcome to tonight's live stream of hashtag Generation Heroes. The successor generation speaks. Are we ready? This forum for tonight is part of the Freedom Spaces initiative of the Center for Liberalism and Democracy in partnership with the Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats and the Frederick Naumann Foundation Philippines. So for tonight, we will be discussing about youth in this generation, how what what are the roles that the youth need to supersede in this coming generation, and everything about freedom and democracy in the region. To formally open our program, I'd like to introduce the person that will be giving welcoming remarks. He is a former senator and a Cambodian politician and the current chairperson of the Council of Asian Liberal and Democrats. He is a strong advocate for democracy and human rights in Cambodia. He has been critical of of the Cambodian government's authoritarian policies and its crackdown on dissent. In 2017, he was elected Secretary General of the Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats, CALD, which is a regional network of liberal and democratic parties in Asia. It is committed to promoting democracy, human rights, and the rule of law in the region. He served as the treasurer for the Candlelight Party of Cambodia, the largest opposition rooted on liberalism and liberal democracy. He is a respected figure in the Cambodian and regional political circles, and he is known for his commitment to democracy and human rights, his courage in speaking out against injustice, and his dedication to serving the Cambodian people. Ladies and gentlemen, please give your virtual round of applause to Mr. Mardy Seng.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Greetings. We are pleased that you can join us in this webinar entitled The Success Generation Speak. Are we ready? As someone who belongs from the older generation, I believe that it is important conversation to have, especially given the recent demographic trends that we are witnessing in the region, particularly in Southeast Asia and East Asia. For example, it has been said that young people aged 15 to 24 make up about 20% of total population in Southeast and East Asia. This is a high proportion than in other regions of the world, such as Europe or North America. The literacy rate among young people in sub-region is over 95%. This is a significant increase compared to previous generations. Over 90% of young people in Southeast and East Asia have access to internet. This gives them unprecedented access to information and education. And young people in sub-region are among the most active users of social media in the world. However, not all trends about young people are positive. For one, the unemployment rate among young people in Southeast and East Asia is said to be higher than overall unemployment rates. Moreover, young people in the sub-region are facing increased mental health challenges, such as depression, anxiety, and suicide. Despite these issues, the successor generation in Southeast and East Asia increasingly become more engaged in civic and political life, as seen in recent political development in the sub-region. In Hong Kong, the young people have played a leading role in pro-democracy movement in recent years. The Chinese government has responded to these protests with crackdowns, include the arrest of pro-democracy activists and the imposition of the new law that restricts fundamental freedom. However, young people in Hong Kong and those Those who were forced to be exiled abroad continue to resist, and they are determined to fight for democracy and human rights wherever they are. In Malaysia, the young people play a key role in the victory of the political opposition in the 2018 and 2022 general election, which ended the decade rules of a governing coalition and ushered in the first real transfer of political power. Moreover, young Malaysians are involved in a variety of social movements, including the fight of climate justice, the promotion of gender equality, and the preservation of Malaysia's multicultural society. They are also using social media to raise awareness about the most important social and political issues. In the Philippines, the youth fueled the election campaign of then Vice President in the 2022 election. They devoted their times and the limited resource they have to conduct what have been considered as the biggest and most creative political campaign to date. While the reality of Philippines politics prevent the campaign from achieving the desired electoral result, the youth political involvement continues to be a check on the incumbent government accesses, especially given the recent debate on the so-called confidential funds. In my native Cambodia, despite the structural constraints, young people have become more engaged in politics. They are using social media to raise awareness about important issues, and they are participating in protests and other forms of civic activism. They are being motivated by a number of factors, include their desire for democracy and human rights, and their concern a better future for themselves, their family, and their community. As seen in these various country experiences, the young people in Southeast and East Asia, by and large, are forced for good. In recent surveys done by the Pew Research Center and Asia Barometer, the results suggest that 3 out of 4 young people consider democracy as the best form of government, even if they have concern about the state of democracy in the respective country. Apart from their work on democracy and human rights, the youth are also involved in other progressive causes, such as environmental protection, elimination of gender opportunities. So, on the question of whether the successor generation is ready, the answer appears to be clear to me. However, I also recognize that there are still a number of constraints and challenges which can prevent the youth from realizing their full potential. My wish is that the discussion tonight can make us understand more of those constraints and challenges so we can propose appropriate solutions of the successor generation. After all, as said, young people have the power to change the world. They just need the opportunity to do so. Thank you for your attention, and may we have a productive and insightful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that very fruitful and insightful welcoming remarks. And just two things to note from what the incumbent CALD chairperson said today earlier was that there are certain constraints, although that the answer is clear, right? That we are truly ready. The successor generation is ready. It's just that there are constraints, and that he wishes that this evening's talk will zero in on those constraints and how to move forward given those constraints. And surely that will be part of the open discussion later on. And just a reminder for everyone, we are live tweeting as well on the Twitter accounts of the Center for Liberalism and Democracy. So if you also want to engage, please use the Generation Heroes. To kickstart our discussion, no, I'd like to welcome and introduce our first uh, panelists for tonight. She is a Malaysian politician and currently serves as the Deputy Chief of Strategy in People's Justice Party, which is led by the Honorable Anwar Ibrahim, Malaysia's Prime Minister. Her recent contribution to politics and governance include focusing on campaign management and communication strategies as the campaign manager for Malaysia's youngest ever election candidates during the recent federal and state elections and development of the SIM Democracy Game with the Frederick Naumann Foundation. It is a board game that taught thousands of youth, politicians, and activists to learn about democracy, the elections, and leadership. In 2018, she influenced her influence in the party was solidified with an appointment to the Supreme Council, making her the youngest female member at that time. In 2022, her tenure was extended by a victory in the party's internal elections. As a national leader, she focuses on critical issues related to human rights, gender discrimination, and battling income inequality. Her exceptional passion was recognized when she was recently awarded the prestigious diploma in international and comparative human rights law from the René Cassin Foundation in Strasbourg, France. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Saudari Ryan Abdul Rahim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Great. Thank you very much for inviting me today to be a panelist. Assalamu alaikum and good evening to everyone who's watching, to everyone who's listening. We are discussing a very important topic today, success generation. I love the question, are we ready? I'm ready. I know I'm ready. I hope all of you watching and listening are ready too. I know that when we are young, we are somewhat intimidated or uh, maybe not confident about the idea of being active in our community, or we are not interested to join a political party, or the thought of putting ourselves out there is daunting. And yes, it can be daunting. But if you can find an organization or platform that suits you and what you believe in, if you can find a political party which is also in line with your beliefs and your values and your passions, if you can find a mentor to guide you, all of this can open up a lot of opportunities for you to do more, to be more, and to enable you to meet your fullest potential. I mentioned political party. I mentioned mentors. Even though I'm a politician, I know a lot of people, when we mention politics, they think of it in a negative light. But I promise you, there are a lot of politicians out there who are very good people. There are a lot of activists out there who are very good people. And a lot of the times, we are fighting for the same thing. We're hoping to have better treatment of everybody within our region. We're hoping for more respect when it comes to human rights, human dignity. We want to uphold democratic values. So I hope that we can discuss this more during the course of the forum today. And I will be happy to share some of my own experiences because I've gone through it all too. a lot of tough days, a lot of hard days. But as youth, we are strong, we are resilient, and we are very relevant. So we can discuss that further in the forum. Thank you, Lakan.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I like how you were framing the two advices was find an organization that suits you and find a mentor. And the key word there was find, because it's not easily given to you, but you have to actively seek, your organization, your community, and or your mentor or a mentor that fits your same ideals and aspirations for whether it's your country, your community, or the region at large. Um, to also give his opening statement, I'd like to introduce our second panelist for tonight. He is currently the chairperson of the CALD Youth, and he is a business economics graduate from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. He was active in the University Student Council of that university, serving as the Ways and Means Counselor, in which he oversees the income generation and external relations of the council. Currently, he assumes the role of Student Affairs Coordinator for the youth wing of the Liberal Party of the Philippines. One of his main roles is organizing student led initiatives as expansions inside various universities. He regularly attends and speaks in workshops, conferences, and seminars. Prior to becoming CALD Youth Chair, he also served as the Secretary General from 2018 to 2023. Currently, he has been advocating and promoting mental health wellness through the movement Mind Care Club. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jeremiah Tomas.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all well. Um, Hello, fellow young minds and respected panelists. Today, we're diving into a topic that hits close to home for a lot of us, the leadership role of the successor generation, the millennials and the Gen Zs. We're not just the future, we're also the present. And we're here to talk about how we're redefining democracy, governance, society, and culture, not only in the Philippines, but across East and Southeast Asia. Our generation grew up with smartphones, the internet, and social media. We've witnessed the power of technology in connecting people, sparking movements, and challenging traditional norms. But we've also seen the darker side of it, the spread of disinformation, polarization, and the rise of populist leaders who seem to threaten the principles of democracy. We can't ignore the challenges. Democratic decline is a real concern, but we're not backing down. Disinformation is spreading like wildfire, but we're learning to discern fact from fiction. Undemocratic leaders might be on the rise, but we're ready to stand up for our values. In the Philippines and throughout the region, we're committed to making a difference, and our generation is incredibly diverse and forward thinking. We believe in equality, social justice, and environmental sustainability. These values align with the essence of our democracy, and we're determined to ensure they thrive. We're not just victims of disinformation, we're the digital warriors fighting back with critical thinking and media literacy. We're not just witnessing the rise of populism, we're pushing back with our voices, advocating for transparency and holding leaders accountable. Our generation understands the power of collaboration, and we're well aware of our global interconnectedness, and we're ready to work together to build a more inclusive, open, and just society. Divisive politics have no place in our vision for the future. So, in our part of the world, it's our time to shine. We're here to lead, innovate, and stand up for our democratic ideals that matter. But we can't do it alone. We need the guidance, support, and collaboration from those who came before us. So, together, let us navigate these challenging waters and build a more robust, democratic, and resilient future for all of us here today as we share our experiences and discuss with our fellow panelists to empower a generation in this crucial journey.
Thank you, Jeremiah. I think you said it best when you, to quote, right, that we're not just the future, we're also the present. And later on, we will zero in on all of the previous panelists and what they've already said. And to introduce as well the third and final member of our panel for tonight, he is a Hong Kong pro democracy politician and lawyer. He was a member of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong, representing the Southern District from 2016 to 2020. He's a former member of the Democratic Party. He entered politics in 2016 when he was elected to the Legislative Council in the general elections. He was the youngest member of the Legislative Council at that time of his election. He is a vocal advocate for democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. He has been critical of the Chinese government's encroachment on Hong Kong's autonomy, and he has called for reforms to the city's political system. He is a founding member of the Hong Kong Democracy Council, an organization that advocates for democracy and human rights in Hong Kong. He was awarded the Law Society of Hong Kong's Human Rights Award in 2020, and he is also a leading figure in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement, a prominent leader of the 2019 anti-government protests. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ted Hoy Chi Fong.
Thank you very much for having me. And it's really my pleasure and an honor to speak here in front of you. Even though I don't feel young anymore, I recall the days when I first participated in CALT events. I was at my mid-20s. Now I'm 41. So, but it makes me more eligible to speak to the youth regarding my past experiences. And I would say, from my experience, entered politics like 13 years ago. At that time, I never would imagine I would come to where I am now today. I'm now living in exile in Australia. I am not able to go home, or I'll be locked up in jails. I have a bounty on my head, 1 million Hong Kong dollar bounty. I'm one of the most wanted persons, Hong Kongers, in the world. So I understand that it's not easy for the host to find Hong Konger to speak, because nowadays we have totally lost our freedom to be critical towards the government. When we speak up for freedom and democracy, and we'll be in more than a trouble. So it goes back to the topic. When I first entered politics as a youngster, I never imagined any of these. I thought it was the status quo. I thought nothing's gonna change. Sometimes in elections, this side win and that side lose, and sometimes it's the pendulum swings. But over time, I realized that politics can change. So as a youth, I would say my advice is that be very ready for change. In politics and in society, changes may take decades. So, for example, in Hong Kong, for the past 25 years, nothing has been changed very drastically, but it's only in the past 2-3 years. So when you are young, you have the time to wait for that opportunity to come. In Hong Kong situation, it's deteriorated very, very, very much. But in some other places, like in Taiwan, there's improvements. So it's a big step, huge achievement towards democracies. So especially in Southeast Asia, and there are democracies, but not many. They might not be very mature, but that's the opportunity that for young people that we can see. We have the time to wait. We have the time to persevere, to really welcome, to prepare ourselves, to equip ourselves to ready for that change. That's even the thing that I have in mind now. Even I'm in exile, I can't do anything back in Hong Kong like I did before, fight against tyrannies directly. But I'm preparing myself. I'm equipping myself. I became a lawyer only after I started my life in Australia. So when you are young, you have that passions, you have that ambitions, you have that determinations to welcome, to know that changes that will come in decades, and that's one thing. I think the other thing, for people like you, uh, to hold, is the courage to make that change. So I would admit that I was one of the courageous type. So as youth, you would think out of the box. It tends to be easier for you to think out of the box. It's you tend to not want to accept that, oh, this society is what we have and we cannot change it. No, you cannot accept that. I didn't accept that. That's why you have innovative thoughts. That's why you really take steps. You really challenge what we are fighting, even amongst your colleagues, even among your mother parties, amongst the establishments that you belong to. You challenge that, and because it takes you, that you are the future, and you think that it's not acceptable, you have something new, you bring it to it. It's perhaps in politics it's even harder. Perhaps in Asian culture you tend to not challenge the seniors, but I'm the type that would challenge the senior. I would challenge my party chairpersons. So I encourage you to do that, to challenge the establishment, to challenge what it is now. And that's the courage that you have, and that's the courage that you need. So you have the time, you have the courage, and you are very well adaptive to changes. That's what I believe youth is. So you are advanced with technologies that senior people like me, for example, I don't think I'm very well equipped with social media anymore compared to people at the teenage, at the 20s. So you're always better with technologies compared to seniors. So that's the things. That's a few things that you have as youth to bring changes, to be courageous, to have the to wait for the opportunity, and to be um, to be best at what you get in terms of technologies. And that would make my opening statement. So I'm hoping to listen to your thoughts and answer to any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Sir Ted. And we'll surely zero in on a lot of those things that you've advised, no, the successor generation to do. And at this point, may I please welcome the other panelists back in the room. So we may also start our open forum and discussion. No? We have a lot of very good insights already from even from the CAL chairperson, Sir Marty, as well. But and we've had several good quotes and comments, no, and insights as well from your openers. But to kickstart our whole discussion, I wanted to give a bit of a situationer um, to all of us. And I think everyone read this in the briefing document. All right, that in the 2022 the Democracy Index report published by the Economist Intelligence Unit, it was found out that the global average score for democracy had fallen to an average of 7.26. This is the lowest average score since 2006. As the successor generation, how can we put, or how would you advise the successor generation uh, in putting back democracy on top? No? How can we convince the youth, our fellow youth, that democracy is a universal value for all and that we must protect it in the region specifically? Perhaps we can first get Ryan's insight on this. No? So just to repeat, the question is how can we put back democracy on top? And how do we convince our fellow youth that democracy is a universal value that we must preserve and protect?
Thank you for the question, Lakan. For Malaysia, it is an interesting time for youth because we recently lowered our age for voting. It used to be 21 years old, but now it's 18 years old. And last year, when we had our elections, federal elections, national elections to select our members of parliament at a federal level, it was the first time if 18 years old, 19 years old, and 20 years old could vote. So I think it was an exciting time for the youth in Malaysia. What was surprising though is majority of them voted for right-wing extreme parties. So the party that I come from, of course, the People's Justice Party, the Prime Minister currently is from the People's Justice Party, and it took us by surprise. So on one hand, it is very exciting that we have more young people participating in elections, which is a crucial part of the democratic process. But at the same time, we also have concerns about what they're thinking, what they believe, and what principles they uphold now. Interestingly, just now, Jeremiah was already talking about the social media. And for Malaysia, in our context, it's TikTok. I blame TikTok. Okay, so last year, going into the elections, I already had a feeling that TikTok was playing an important role. And we didn't really know the 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds. We didn't really know if the young people were going to vote for us or not. But I felt like we didn't try hard enough to be present in TikTok, which we knew was a space that they were very active in. So, on one hand, yes, we're very happy when young people are more involved in the democratic process. But on the other hand, we also want to make sure that they get exposed to the best of democratic values.
All right. Thank you, Ryan, for that insight. Would Jeremiah like to follow what Ryan just said?
So before I speak about that, it's so nice to see you, Ted. It's like it was just like yesterday when I saw you and you were fighting, and I hope you're well there. From all of your CAL youth and your CAL family, we hope you the best. If you need anything, just let us know. As to the point, bouncing off what Ryan said, I think this is indeed true. We see that for the Philippines as well, wherein in the last elections we saw the largest influx of young voters, and for the years to come, they will be a pivotal force to reckon with. But the challenge remains when it comes to helping them understand about what democracy should be. So the direction that politics has taken in the past few elections as well as the past few years has been saddening for a lot of people. They see the same people in politics here in the Philippines. They tend to not want to get involved in any of these party politics or to be part of the system, they say. And that is a great challenge. So for me, what I see when it comes to how the youth should be. I think they should start with their communities and start where it matters to them and help their communities, because then and there they'll feel that democracy exists. So when it comes to the basic decisions that their villages have, they'll see how politics could be used as a force for good. And I think in our own little ways, when we see the need and we feel that need, then we can be part of the changing system as well. And definitely, there is a need for that change. And touching on the topic of TikTok, yes, like I think 1 in every 4 Filipinos are on TikTok. It was a force to be reckoned with during the elections, and I don't think we were as prepared as we should have been. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And lastly, Sir Ted, would you like to also follow?
Yes, I think Hong Kong is a fine example of why the youth in Southeast Asia should put democracy on top. Because as young people, as youth, you are often the targets of tyrannies, of dictators. If ever they want to destroy the strongest enemy, they want to destroy the youth. So there are familiar names that might be familiar to you. For example, Joshua Wong. For example, Nathan Law. They are still at their 20s when they emerged in politics in civil societies as leaders. They were only a teenager. Now Joshua Wong is still in jail. It's the fourth year of him being in jail now, sadly. And Nathan has taken an early step to step away from Hong Kong. That's why he is free now, living in exile in the UK. So you see, the rest of the youth are now being the targets. The colleagues of Joshua Wong's, the former colleagues, and all the youngest legislators and civil society leaders, they've all been in jails or they are still serving their times in jails. So if we don't fight in the early stage, they will destroy you first. I think that's one evidence that's convincing for youth in Southeast Asia. Many are still fighting, for example, in Myanmar. I can see that. And the second thing is that as youth, even you made it early to the establishment, even you made it to MP. Like me, I made it as an MP at my early 30s. It's you are less prone to be in the comfort zone, to stay in the comfort zone. You still remember because you are young, you're still early in your political career, for example. You still remember for what reasons you joined politics. You don't easily get, um, influenced by the fame, the riches, the connections that you have, and it's often for older people, they stay in their comfort zone. They think as long as they can be re-elected, they can continue the fight forever in that positions. No, but as youth, we understand that this is just a stepping stone somehow in my life, and there's something more I want to achieve. So that ambition is what the youth has, and the other generations might not have. I think that's the reasons why we need to put democracy on top and we really start at the early stage.
All right, thank you, Sir Ted. And I'm hearing from the group right now, all right, that there are challenges, no, in different countries that we have. In Malaysia, for instance, the TikTok has been a very good example of an emerging challenge that has already already been there. That it's already emerged. It's in par with the other social media giants that we have in election seasons. In the Philippines, just like what Jeremiah said, that there's also um, that presence of TikTok in the previous elections, which I think in the Philippine context specifically has democratized. People also in on Facebook have also migrated to TikTok as well. I wonder if it's the same thing for the other countries as well. And then in Hong Kong, you have the perfect case study or perfect case of how we should, you know, protect democracy in Hong Kong. And I wanted to follow up this discussion with the idea of in your own practices right now, in whatever endeavors, whether it's law, it's in organizing, it's in the human rights sector. What sort of practices have you seen, that the youth, the successor generation gravitate toward? Like what type of leadership, what type of energy have you seen throughout the years as well, from how long since we've been organizing? Perhaps we can have Jeremiah first, and then Sir Ted, you, and then Ryan later on. So Jeremiah.
So as youth, I think we've always been labeled as people who have a lot of energy to do things, And I think for a lot of youth, that's the case. For me, I think I'm tired most of the time. Kidding aside, um, the youth is a very energetic group, I would say, where we could mobilize and we could assemble and we could spearhead events. And as being part of the youth, I think we should, as I said initially, we should be more engaged with our communities. We try to look for problems and help the people around us solve it, right? Because once you're able to show them that you're able to address these problems, regardless of having the resources or not, your simple posting on social media of the stories of the people can really help them. And I've seen a lot of youth movements grow this way, especially during the pandemic, wherein there were a lot of efforts here in the Philippines to fundraise for their different communities, and it has brought change to those communities, and more people join the youth. So as to how the youth should be organized and mobilized, um, I think because of the energy of the youth, they should have a collective action plan or steps in order to move forward um, together, because the attention span for these certain projects come and go for a lot of the youth. So maybe through participation of the governments or organizations, or through mentorships even, I've seen a way for the youth to move forward and grow and learn from the older mentors. And with that, I think politics shouldn't be um, attached to the idea of having power or having or using it against someone else. I think it should be a tool for the youth and for people to really fight for themselves. And when you really show other people that you're genuine and you're sincere in what you do and what you're trying to do for them in the community, I think they get what politics means and what democracy means by that. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Ted, Sir Ted.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you have heard of a slogan from Hong Kong during our 2019 People's Uprising. The slogan is called "Be Water, Be Water." So I think youth is like water. So water is flexible. So water is transformable into other forms. So sometimes, but water at the same time is very powerful. So in the street protest, the very intense street protest back in 2019, the youth gathered very quickly. They call them leaderless mobilizations. So the youth gather very quickly in the streets and disperse very quickly. So that's a very smart way of fighting the riot police, because we are harder to catch, and that's why the movement can last longer. And when we don't have the weapon sets that can match the police, the regimes, that's one thing. But at the same time, when we are persistent, when we are always there, we are so powerful. We really crushed the regimes. Even though people might say we didn't win anything, but we've won people's hearts. We've we've shown the world that where our moral ground is and our passion for freedom and democracy is, by all the intense protests. So the youth has all these qualities. So I would say yes, be water. And if you recall the 2019 protests and also the 2014 umbrella movement that Hong Kong is famous of, it's led by the youth, and they don't just really came out like from scratch. I think it takes years and decades for the youth to participate early in civil societies. The youth in Hong Kong didn't participate very much in politics at the early stage, but they participated very early in civil societies. People like Joshua Wong, they emerged from civil society. So it takes time to nurture them, to water the soil, or the soil of democracies. That's the youth, and I think that's the power and that's the practice.
Thank you, Sir Ted. Miss Ryan.
So my experience as a young woman in politics, I mean, it's hard enough being a woman, and it's even harder being young in politics. My experience when it comes to policies or quotas, when we're discussing about gender, I find that there's a lot of positive response when we make a statement like 30% minimum, 30% quota for women in all levels of government or all levels of leadership. So generally, it's a positive response. But when I try to say we should have a quota of 30% for youth, I'm not so lucky in those discussions. I don't get as positive of a response in those discussions. I conduct a lot of training as a national leader in my party. I conduct a lot of trainings, and I've also conducted a lot of trainings for young women. So between the ages of say 18 to 35 years old. I remember there was this one particular training when I put up that statement that we should have 30% quota for women in all levels of government. Almost all of them agreed. But when I changed the statement, we should have 30% quota for youth in all levels of government positions. Almost all of them didn't agree. That means this group of young women who were interested in politics and had already become members of political parties, when they speak about women holding positions in government or leadership, they weren't thinking of themselves. They were imagining women maybe in their 50s or 60s or 70s, but they weren't thinking of themselves as young women. So when we talk about youth, I think one of the challenges is it's not about necessarily it's about the system or the landscape or the country. Sometimes it really is the individual person to find that confidence and for them to believe in themselves that they are worthy, that they should try to rise up and become leaders, that they too should be able to go out there, explore politics, put yourself out as a candidate in elections. Trying to help them to build that confidence is also, I think, part of the process. So when we talk about building organizations, it's a combination of youth getting together, supporting each other, and at the same time, youth having mentors who believe in them and can guide them.
Wow. Thank you, Ma'am Ryan, for that insight. I wanted to follow that with a question of why do you think that there was a decline with the second statement specifically? With what is it? Do you think that's a generational thing? Do you think that's like a culture thing in Asia? Or do you think? What do you think would be a possible cause to that? And how do you think we should address it so that more people also think of themselves as the ones volunteering for this?
I think not just in Malaysia, but also in other countries within this region. I think all of us are seeing similar scenarios for a very, very long time. Politics or government was obviously dominated by people more senior than us, veterans. But the landscape is changing. In Malaysia, in our elections recently, I think about half of the voters were 40 years and below. So it makes young people even more relevant, even more important. Like it's more important for them to be part of the political discourse. Some efforts that I see in Malaysia when it comes to, say, programs, we had the youth parliament. And that was a very successful program. A lot of people applied for it. So they did youth parliament. They started at a federal level. And then a dozen of those participants did a spin off program for a female youth parliament. And now we have youth parliament at state level. So there are more and more initiatives to encourage young people to participate in programs where they get a direct exposure to democracy and the democratic process. So, of course, those are programs and it's great. More importantly, though, political parties also have to have platforms specifically for youth. This is to ensure that there is representation, participation representation, leadership opportunities. We want to make sure that the youth feel that their voice, their opinions are really heard. In Malaysia, a lot of the political parties, typically they would have a women's wing, and then they would also have a youth wing. So for me, in my party, it wasn't enough. Okay. So we also decided to have another wing for young women. Because when you speak about women in their 50s, their life, their experiences, their needs are different to women in their 20s, of course. And then when you want to compare a 20-year-old young man and a 20-year-old young woman, again, they would have, maybe different interests, different needs. So trying to cater for the different needs is also very important in the context of politics. When you have these platforms, chapters, wings, bureaus, committees, whatever you call it, when you have ways to get youth more involved, it also means that they would build up their confidence and they would potentially offer themselves to become candidates in elections. Because ultimately, you need young people to become candidates. You need young people to participate in elections. You need young women, you need young people to win in elections. Because when they become lawmakers, legislators, members of parliament, that's when their voices can truly be heard.
Wow, thank you, Ma'am Ryan. I'm personally learning a lot on political organization, and I think like with Sir Ted and Jeremiah, Jeremiah's nodding his head right now, and I think he's learning a lot as well for the Liberal Party of the Philippines on how it
Yeah.
can also move forward. No,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Come to Kuala Lumpur, Jeremiah. Come to Malaysia.
you see there's
Yes,
already
we'll
an
do. We'll
invitation.
do. Ted, join
All
us.
right, yeah. We
Or
have
we all go and see Ted in Australia. We can all
Yeah.
go and visit Ted in Australia and
Yes.
have a
That
good
would be
discussion
great.
in
Would be
Australia.
great.
That's right. That's right. Um, we have a few questions here from the audience, and I'd like to ask. No, I think we have three. Yeah, we have three questions here specifically. The first one is directed to Sir Ted Hugh. It's flashed right now in the screen, but I will also be reading this. This is from John Joseph Coronel, the president actually of the Center for Liberalism and Democracy. He says, I have a question for Mr. Ted Hui. Many of the Hong Kong activists, including dear friends, are now in exile. Aside from joining the diaspora, what are the options left for Hong Kong's youth people? Bluntly put, is it just to remain silent and not engage in political activities? Should they choose to stay put? Is there a chance for Hong Kong to return to democracy, at least in the turnover level? Or is the only way for Hong Kong to become a democratic society is for China itself to become a democracy?
Yes, thank you, and thank you, John, for these excellent questions. This is excellent because it's very, very difficult to answer. That's the question that the Hong Kong diaspora has been thinking and thinking again in our time in our exile. What can we do for Hong Kong now? We are outside, and can we just make suggestions for Hong Kongers who are still in Hong Kong to do this and that? No, it's very difficult because it will be them who suffer. It will be them who be locked up in jail. So we can't kind of do that. But what are the options for those who are still in Hong Kong? We've totally lost our freedom to speak up. Now, holding a blank paper in public in protest will be a crime, and you go to jail for it. And at this level, what can you do? So my idea is that my take is that for those who remain in Hong Kong shouldn't sacrifice themselves. They shouldn't be, you know, going directly against the regimes just to protect themselves. If they all go to jail, so who will be fighting and who will be there to equip themselves and be prepared for democracy to come? No, so they should hold back. But at the same time, it's very easy to lose power. They will feel powerless if they can't do anything. That's why now the responsibility is on our shoulders for those who are overseas, the diasporas. So we are speaking for them. We speak publicly and we live in high profile, very high profile, try to speak the voice that Hong Kongers is trying to say, what they are trying to say but cannot say. So, for example, we comment on electoral systems. We are critical towards the wrongdoings of Hong Kong officials and constitutional reforms and level of democracies and the erosion of the judiciary. Those are the topics that we speak about every day for Hong Kongers. And at the same time, when there's an exodus of Hong Kongers moving out of Hong Kong, they are everywhere now. They are mostly in the UK and Canada and many in Australia. So we are organizing ourselves as Hong Kong diaspora groups, some at grassroots level, some aiming more at integrations to the mainstream society, and I'm doing professional groups as well. So a comprehensive perspective from different Hong Kongers groups. To make allies internationally so that they also speak for Hong Kong. We speak for Hong Kong. I think that's the only way that Hong Kongers feels that, oh, they are not alone and that we are still supporting them and they have allies, even they are silent. That's quite the only way. So to keep them alive, to keep their fire in their hearts, their spirit high, even though they can't speak. I think that's very important. The question that whether we wait for China to be a democracy to that Hong Kong can change. No, I'm not optimistic about that. I think Hong Kongers and many Chinese are waiting for the tyranny, the dictator in China to step down, to die down, because they become more isolated, because they are becoming the enemy of the world. And I think that day is even closer as long as we work harder. So I don't believe that Hong Kong will have democracy before China dies down itself. So that's my take.
Thank you, Sir Ted, for that very comprehensive answer, no, to this hard, as you said before, it's a hard question. It's an excellent because an excellent question because it's hard. We have another question actually that sort of what do you call that, ties into the previous statement, and perhaps we can have whoever from the panel can actually ask, can answer this as well. This is from Lev Maywin. Good day, Excellencies. I'm Lev Ramboyang from the De La Salle College of St. Benilde, taking up governance and public affairs. Given the undeniable passion and improved participation of the youth, may I just ask how we can safely challenge the status quo? So the question is actually about safety. As in the Philippines, those who voice out any constructive criticisms to the government are perceived as threats, quote unquote threats, or enemies of the state. So the question is, how can we safely challenge the status quo given the dangers that it may also possess? Perhaps we can have Jeremiah to answer first, and then followed by Sir Ted, and then Ma'am Ryan.
I think being active and being open to joining groups and your networks is one way wherein the youth can safely challenge status quo, because a lot of the times people are already tired of talk, right? So a lot of the times there are a lot of promises, there's a lot of things that we want to change, but never really taking any action to this. And one way, as I've constantly been encouraging people to do, is to be active in their communities, to do something for their local needs. So just know where to start and engage people. So we do help and connect with people when it comes to capacity building, or you could tap any one of us here from the panel today if there's any need for that as well. As for voicing out and the government receiving criticisms as being threats, I think it's important to be part of networks wherein if you're only an individual, right, the government can easily attack you and shut you up. But if you're part of this larger movement, larger group, as how the youth in Hong Kong was, then the government is at their mercy, right? Where when you have a collective group of people who might not be from the same background but believe in the same ideals and the same things, if you find that group of people within your communities, use social media, for example, reach out and try to join and be active in these communities when there's a call for volunteers or there's a call for participants. Don't be afraid to sign up. Don't be afraid to join. Those are the immediate things that the youth can already do. And to be the change that they want to see, action is really required because talk is really cheap. And I think action really moves people as well. So if you have your own stories, share them on social media. The power of it is very incredible now. So we live in a world where everything, literally everything, is at our disposal and at the end of our fingertips, right? So we just have to be resourceful about these things.
Sir Ted, uh, you'd like to follow as a person who has had his safety, you know, questioned several times. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just use my own experience um, to challenge the regimes. You have to know exactly where the red line is, and sometimes you don't go beyond the red line because you don't want to give the regimes a very obvious reasons to lock you up and to prosecute you and put you to jails. I remember I I I am perhaps the only person who have ever protested inside the parliament, inside the chamber, with a stink bomb. So because it was very difficult at that time because we followed all the rules and it didn't go anywhere. We do filibusters inside the parliament, and the chairperson would just cut your time and remove you physically from the chamber of the parliament so that you can't speak. So we were trying to be flexible, to be water, to think of a way to use the stink bomb. That stink bomb that I used was rotten plants, so it's not chemicals. So they can't charge me for administering chemicals, and I didn't throw it at anyone. I just dropped it on the floor by mistake. So that's but it stinks for a few days. So I interrupted, so very unreasonable proceedings inside parliament. So that's that kind of tactics that you're challenging it, but you don't go beyond the red lines. You don't give an obvious reasons for them to lock you up, and that's one way. The other way is that you 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 got to be patient. You got to make it to the parliament. You got to make it somewhere higher in the ladder before you really try to cross the red line. Because when you have the standing, um, it's harder. It's even harder. That's Jeremy's point to make troubles for you. That's why I was standing at the front line in the 2019 protest very often as an MP, because they would know that as an MP, the media's cameras will be always shooting at you, so they can't beat you up, and that's some way to do it. But if I am a nobody in the streets, they will just drag me to the corner and beat me up. So that's one way of doing it.
Thank you, Sir Ted. Yeah. Ma'am Raya.
Well, if as an individual, you want to avoid getting into trouble with the government, then you have to be super famous on TikTok or become a social influencer. And if you have so many followers, then the government probably won't mess with you. But it might take a while to become super famous. So I agree with Jeremiah. Our strength is in our numbers. So if you join an organization or a political party, focus on making that organization or that political party stronger. When it is strong, then you will have a lot of opportunities to be able to spread your influence and spread your message. Uh, when you talk about wanting to uh, bring change, it doesn't necessarily only have to be through demonstrations, throwing stink bombs in parliament, or having debates all the time. If your organization or your political party is the first to arrive at the scene of a flood to help flood victims, to clean their homes or provide them with necessities, people will see that. If you are if your organization or your political party always spends important festivals or national or religious occasions with orphans, make them happy, or with the elderly, or those who are underprivileged or oppressed. I mean, when you do good in your community, people will see that and people will respect you and your organization or your political party. The more people know about you and your organization or political party, the more you will have opportunity to spread your influence and spread your message. And finally, when you want to bring change, it's not going to happen overnight. I'm sorry to disappoint you if you think if you think just attending a protest today will bring change tomorrow. I'm sorry to disappoint you. A lot of change takes place 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I mean, even in Malaysia, it took more than 20 years for us to finally have Anwar Ibrahim as our prime minister. So I know sometimes we get very excited and we're very passionate and we want to see change happen immediately, but we have to accept the fact that a lot of good things it takes a while to cook them. So just remain steadfast, remain resilient, and always remember that you have to be sincere to be able to get through this very, very long journey.
Thank you, Ma'am Ryan. And I think the quote there would be to be water, right? To be water. Patience, yeah, being water is also being patience, right? Yeah, our ability to be water is powerful and relevant, as Sir Ted earlier reiterated. There are there's another question here on uh, in terms of the effective ways, no, of ensuring what do you call this? I'll just read it. This is from Muhammad Rais Mamad. What are the most effective ways to ensure that young people's voice are taken seriously by policymakers and decision makers in the Philippines, Malaysia, and Hong Kong? What are the biggest challenges that the young people face in participating in political process in the Philippines, Malaysia, and Hong Kong? So the question is basically two things. How can the successor generation be taken more seriously in our respective countries, and how or what are the challenges, no, that you think are being faced by the successor generation in the specific countries as well. Perhaps we can have Ma'am Raya Ryan first, and then Sir Ted, and then Jeremiah.
Okay. I think most importantly, as I mentioned before, we do need more young people as lawmakers, as legislators, as local councillors, as members of parliament. But the young people need to be exposed to what elections really means, what the democratic process is really about. So best would be to start the education process, the awareness from even in high school. We have this SDG Sim Democracy game, which is a board game that we developed together with the Friedrich Naumann Foundation. The original game designer from Thailand, her name is Rutikon Rutikon. When she developed the game in Thailand, they used it for children, for school children, but also in high school. In high school. So with this board game, they will learn about the whole process of democracy. They learn about elections. They learn about best qualities of a leader, how to vote and choose your prime minister, how to implement checks and balances, how to participate in the federal budget's decision making. So using a tool which sounds pretty simple, a board game, it's a lot of fun, but having a tool like this helps us to start the education process on democracy from younger age.
Thank you, Ma'am Ryan. Sir Ted.
Yeah. To me, from my experience, there is no effective ways to ensure that policymakers will listen to decision makers will listen to the youth. There's no effective way uh, if you don't fight. So I think the most effective way is to be the power yourself. So, for example, I used to be in major political parties back in Hong Kong, mild ones, and my political spectrum was the can be said to be the minority because I'm the more radical wing in a fairly moderate political parties. So often I propose progressive ideas and innovative ideas. It's easily banned and easily rejected by my parties. But doesn't matter if you dare to try, if you dare to speak up in public, you are creating some noise, and when you be the voice, when you get media attentions and you get popular, perhaps on the internet, then your party has to listen to you anyway. And then when it comes to elections, because you're one of the more famous guys, you win in opinion polls, and so they are reluctant, but you have to put you on the list to run for public elections. Sometimes it's just by fighting. So that's my experience within the political parties. But when you're outside of a political party, when you're and individuals, you start organizing and to get allies in civil societies, make your civil society organizations very strong, and to get to a topic that's very of public concerns, speak for those topics that politicians don't dare touching. Then it's after all, it's that the social status or the popularity or the publicity that you need to fight for it for yourself. It's not given by decision makers often. It's not given by your mother parties. So it's often worked that way from my experience.
Jeremiah. Would
Uh,
like to follow that.
I think it. Yeah, yeah. Indeed, it's very challenging that people take you seriously, especially if you're young, right? They tend to brush you aside and say that you don't know any better about certain things. So I think it's really important, number one, to really know about what you're fighting for, to really show them that you understand deeply and understand emotionally these problems and what it entails when it comes to fighting for them. Because if leaders do see that you're knowledgeable about these things, the next thing would be to show up and really take action. Because oftentimes they say that the youth is unreliable. And that's why for a lot of like election pollsters and people in position, they tend to brush aside the youth, right? But if you constantly show up prepared and you know what you're talking about, then you try to create that network and that community that goes along with this message that you're trying to form. Then you become stronger with your network, and when you're a force to be reckoned with, when you're able to have people supporting your cause as well from different organizations, I think the people have to take you seriously then, right? And you show them that through action. So that's something that's very, very important, because um, leaders will look at people first who show up, second, people who know what they're talking about, and then the youth can push for their agendas and push for what they want to fight for, because no one else will, right? And then, of course, make use of technology. We have TikTok. If you want to reach a lot of people, use social media, use all of these things to create clamor and to create a movement. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Jeremiah, as well. No. So yeah, I'm hitting. I'm hearing a lot of sentiments. No, of actually claiming power for ourselves. No, the successor generation must claim and occupy that position of power for to become not to be listened to by policymakers, but to be the actual policymakers. No, to implement the solutions that they think fit for respective solutions. And speaking of issues, I wanted to ask, because we were talking about earlier joining community, right? And then looking for a mentor. I'd like to trace back there a bit and asking the panel of how you think um, young people understand, or how do we convince the successor generation as well of how the immediate community concerns are of a national importance. And so how do you bring, whether it's on a local community level, how do you convince people that's also on a national and or regional issue for that matter? So I wanted to ask this because this has been prevalent as well in my own community where I've been organizing. So perhaps Sir Ted, you can start, and then I'll call Jeremiah and then Ma'am Ryan.
Thank you. That's also very interesting questions, because I had that questions back in my early days when I entered politics. Sometimes topics of national concerns, very important topics like in Hong Kong would be freedom and democracy, rule of law. But when you first enter politics, you run as a local councillor or perhaps mayor in your countries. Um, you might not touch on those topics, and people, the electorate, might not think that, oh, you are not at that level. So sometimes the topics you are concerned with in the community level, they are not related to the national topics in the national concern. But I remember Ryan raised a good point earlier, that wherever topic you are on, it is for the youth to establish that you are trustworthy, that you are knowledgeable, that you are determined to serve the people, and through the process you earn their trust and you earn their respect. and you accumulate all this trust and respect, and you widen it, and you broaden it. At the time you climb up one level in the ladder, you became municipal councillor, for example, and that's how you accumulate all your respect until you are at the top level, at the federal level, as an MP. So at that time, people will remember all the good things that you've done at lower levels and pay respect to you. And at that time, when you say something they've never thought about, when Ted Hui says that democracy is good, even the very grassroots people who doesn't understand what democracy is will believe, because I've been watching Ted Hui, this man, for decades, and I believe what he says is good. Sometimes democracy builds on that. So that's one way of doing it.
Thank you, Sir Ted. Jeremiah, would like to follow what Sir Ted said?
So when it comes to the issues, like let me talk about the Philippines, for example. Um, so in the harder challenges when it comes to being able to deliver proper healthcare to Filipino people. And a way we've been able to help with that through our networks and our organization is to be able to look for possible solutions in these areas. So once you've identified your problem, you look out into the world and or in this instance the internet, right, and check where there are solutions that have been done in different parts of the world regarding these problems. So for us, we saw that this was a concern, so we were able to reach out to a mental health or a telehealth company in the based in the states to help in the program for digitalizing healthcare here in the Philippines. So we're going to have one of the pilot projects with one of the local communities we have here in the Philippines. So one of the municipalities in the province of Iloilo, if I'm not. If you see the problem, you try to find a solution, and then you empower people who are also in your communities. And then from there, try to reach out to people, because we're not really experts of doing all of these things, right? People are in their own right, maybe abroad, maybe locally, figuring out the solutions to the problems that we're facing. And as people in the community, we can connect them to people who can make decisions, right? So whether be it our school principal, for example, or the dean, or the mayor, or the councillor, once we open these suggestions up to them, once we open these topics up to them, and then see how it goes from there. So that way, we really have action and we really have skin in the game when we're trying to solve these problems. So I'd start with that. So starting with a problem you see in your community, then you try to find solutions, and you try to find other people who have experienced these problems as well, and then collectively take action. Connect people, think of ways how to solve this. Reach out to different organizations such as CALD, FNF, or even CLD, right? So to see whether there can be collaborations that can be done.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Ma'am Brian?
I think sometimes when we talk about youth, we make it sound like, oh, it's just one bunch of of people, like just this one group of people within our country, when really it's not. I mean, youth are everywhere. Youth, when you talk about, say, doctors and nurses, some countries have issues with doctors not getting fair compensation or fair wages. Some of those doctors and nurses are youth, right? When you're talking about small business owners, especially during COVID, a lot of the small businesses had to shut down. We talk about it as, as obviously as a bigger problem of small business owners, but some of them are youth. We talk about single mothers, making sure that their welfare we look after their welfare. Some of those single mothers are youth. And when we talk about politicians as well, some of them are youth. So when we talk about youth are not homogeneous. Yes, we have a lot of common concerns. We have common issues, but we are also very diverse. We have different experiences, we have different ideas, and we have different strengths. So for us to recognize that we are special in that way, right? That we are in all sorts of segments in society, for us to recognize our strength and be able to come together for common cause, I think we could really see some positive change. When we talk about diversity, the word that some people use is, oh yeah, you and me, we have our differences, we'll just tolerate it. Some people are one notch better. They don't use the word tolerate differences. They say respect. We respect our differences. But the better scenario would be to be able to celebrate that diversity. And I think that if we were able to do that, we'd be able to do great things for our nations.
Thank you, Ryan. Just a time check for everyone right now. It's 7:31, no, and we're supposed to end at 8 o'clock. So I have just I guess one more question, and then after that, perhaps we can all wrap up. I'll have the panelists have their final remarks, advice, reminders, and such before we actually close the discussion. So the last question revolves more on the idea, and I'd like to somehow pivot our talk on political participation and democracy and youth participation as the successor generation to factoring in Asian culture or Asian cultures. No? So the idea is that and I've heard this a lot in even in my own university, wherein the debate has always been democracy is a product from the West. And that's a prevalent idea that I've heard in a lot of discussions, a lot of papers. But I wanted to factor this in, given that it's if it is that if it traces its roots from the West, and then you have a population, a region in Asia that that's somehow relationship oriented, family centered to a very large extent, also hierarchical, as what Sir Ted earlier mentioned as well. How do you convince not necessarily the successor generation, but the Asian community at large that um, democracy works and it is a universal value? No? So how do we convince people in that such manner, especially that the youth do believe in it, no, and they see it as a trajectory in the at present and in the far future. Perhaps we can have Sir Ted first ask to answer, and then we have Jeremiah, and then Ma'am Ryan.
Thank you. I might not be the best person to answer this because Hong Kong has been a bit more westernized society right from the beginning. So we already had half democracy. We had a half democracy and some high degree of freedom. But I do realize in Asian culture, as I said, Asian people tend to be more looking up to senior members of the societies, senior members in your parties, and pay more respect and tend to challenge them less. I think this culture has to change. So as a naughty boy in my party, and even as a uh, giving people that image, I think young people really have to be naughty sometimes, and to resist that culture, and to challenge even your own people, even your own parties. and that's one thing. And the other thing is that when you're in a democracy that's not very mature, it's from time to time it's the connections and your family backgrounds and how much money that you own that put you up to positions in the parliaments, and that seems to be very hard to break. But that's not the case in Hong Kong. So Hong Kong, well, we don't have to be very rich to be very connected, but you're eligible to be running as a candidate. So regarding that questions, I might leave that to you to answer. But always, I think as youth, we start from innovations, innovative ideas. As long as that you have that in mind, I think the rest will be just the tools that you'll find. But at the very least, you have to believe in yourself that you really can do it. Your ideas really working, and then just let society and the resources do the rest.
Thank you, Sir Ted. Jeremiah?
Even if democracy is if you say it, a Western concept, I don't think it's exclusive to the West, right? So if we would want to convince people about a democracy that works, we should also abide by the cultural adaptations that is very special in our region. So for the Philippines, for example, it's a predominantly Catholic country. For our other Southeast Asian counterparts, it's Muslim or Buddhist and so on, right? So all of these countries have their own norms, and they have their own culture and contexts as well. And democracy is not a one size fits all solution when it comes to how we are able to incorporate them in our governance structure. We should look at the points that they could add value, but at the same time, respect our local traditions and values as well. So there's also the idea of like gradually transitioning democracy into our systems, because for some of the Asian countries, democracy is not yet existent, right? And of course, we have to really adapt it by having ownership of democracy as in the context of our own countries, and not because someone else from outside or from the West is pushing these ideals down our throats. So it should also be inclusive in nature, ensuring that all citizens should be part of that democratic process, regardless of their backgrounds or their identity. They should all be able to participate in this process, which is sometimes very hard in the context of Southeast Asia, right? Wherein a lot of the politicians are from families who have been in the positions for the longest time. And that's something that we have to constantly try to change and to show the better side of what democracy is. And it comes without saying that it's not just about elections, right? Right. It's also about the strong rule of law, the independent judiciary system, and the protection of human rights. And that's, I think, what's important about how democracy is. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Ma'am Ryan?
For me, when it comes to politics, I I wouldn't suggest that the youth are detached from the seniors or the elders. I wouldn't suggest for the youth to establish their own political parties. Instead, I would suggest for the youth to join an established political party, but ensure that they have a platform to have their voices heard. Of course, for that to happen, there needs to be trust, there needs to be respect. I agree with Ted when it comes to Asian societies, the relationship between between the youth and the elders. It's quite delicate. I understand that, and I've experienced it myself in 2018 when I was elected onto the Supreme Council of the People's Justice Party. I was the youngest female member, and it was very daunting. It was very daunting for me. Many times I felt that the seniors uh, wouldn't take me seriously. I felt that the seniors didn't care about my opinion, but I didn't give up. I mean, I was persistent. I was always trying to think what are fresh new ideas that I could share. I was always volunteering to help with committees whenever they had events or programs or special tasks. So with that persistency, eventually the seniors saw that even though I was young, I could also add value. And that opened up more opportunities for me. So when we talk about politics, even when we talk about democracy, I mean, like Jeremiah said, it has to be in the context of our own country. And this is something that we can actually determine. This is something that we can influence. Even when we were doing the sim democracy game, the version that Friedrich Naumann Foundation shared with us was a version that was suitable for Thailand. And even though we're neighbors and we love each other, of course, there's going to be some differences between Malaysia and Thailand, the way that we apply our democratic values. So with that sim democracy game, we made some changes to suit a Malaysian context. So while we acknowledge that there are a lot of similarities, we also recognize that there are differences. And the best way is always to have our own perspective and our own context when we are promoting democratic values.
Thank you, Ryan. And at this juncture, I'll just be asking the panel of their, what do you call this? Their final remarks, no, for our audience that's what watching live on our uh, Facebook live stream. So what and I'd like us to answer the question. No, it's a yes or no question, and you can expand on it on your closing statement. Is the successor generation ready? Perhaps you can have Jeremiah first, and then Sir Ted, and then Ma'am Ryan. Uh,
So are we ready? Lakan, no? um, I think we should be ready because the times do call for it, right? And time waits for no one. And with all of the things that's been happening all around, we should constantly equip ourselves, find our networks, because we can't do this alone. As what Ted was saying, be like water. We should be able to connect not only with people or people from our generation who are in the Philippines or in the region, but we should be global citizens, right? There's a lot of networks, there's a lot of communities out there fighting for freedom and democracy all throughout the world. And we shouldn't let our physical um, space limit us from what we can do on social media, what we can do to support our community globally, right? Because democracy is a battle that every person must be doing day in and day out. And we can help our fellow citizens by doing our part here in the country while we show them support, while we learn from them, and while we come together and see the challenges and the solutions that we may be able to offer together. So, yeah, for CALD and CALD youth, I think that's what we do best. We learn from each other and we see the world as how other people see it, right? Because challenges, they will come. And Hong Kong was for Ted, Hong Kong was just the beginning, right? And we never know when it comes to these threats when they'll be in our backyard, right? It's easy to just see and observe people without doing anything, but then what if you're next, right? So we should do our part to help and strengthen each other, and really develop democracy wherever we can. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Sir Ted, your closing remarks. Is the
Yeah,
successor generation ready?
are we ready? I don't think it should be the question. It should be the command. It's something you say it to yourself. I am ready. Say it to yourself. I am ready, because you can't wait. Even you're young, you can't wait, because, as I said, changes. Politics change so rapidly. So Hong Kong is a fine example. When democracy collapsed, it just collapsed in a few months or in a few years. You will never anticipate that. So when democracy comes, you need to be equipped. You need to be ready. You need to know how it works, and you need to be able to run it. So grasp what you have, treasure the moment. If you have an important topic, an idea, some innovations, let it shine, let it come out. So um, do it, put it into actions. I think that's the answer for the youth. It's not a question, it's a command. You speak to yourself.
Thank you, Sir Ted. Ma'am Raya?
Well, at least Ted said the command is "I am ready" rather than him instructing "you must be ready." So at least he's allowing for the individual person to make that decision. For me, I think that the successor generation is ready to participate. Now, when you are ready to participate, it doesn't mean that you have to immediately become a full-time politician overnight. It doesn't mean that you have to commit every minute of every single day to a particular organization or a particular cause. Participation means that you have come to the realization that you also want to contribute to society. You could, for example, just attend a meeting or a gathering held by a political party in your area, and you attend not necessarily to immediately sign up as a member of the political party, but just to have the exposure, just to get the experience of what a political party talks about, or what that political party does, or what is important to that political party. And you might decide, oh, I don't like this political party, and that's fine. You're still finding your way, but you must take the first step and make a decision to participate. There will be plenty of opportunities for you along the way. There will also be plenty of challenges along the way. There will be some very, very good days. There will also be some very, very tough days. So your conscience must be clear. You have to be very strong to your values, and you must always remember that finally, what you're doing is to bring change in the long run for yourself, your family, your community, and your nation. So good luck.
Thank you everyone for participating, no, in tonight's generation heroes. The successor generation speaks. Are we ready? And to answer the question, yes, we are ready, as Sir Ted said earlier. And just to somehow summarize all the things that we've discussed, no, so that's I think the starting point and the end point of our discussion today is that we are ready. The successor generation is ready. It must find community. It must find its mentors. It must be water. It must have safety measures and eventually take action and claim the power of the people, because that's the power that the successor generation owes itself as well. And to close our program, I'd like to call the president of the Center for Liberalism and Democracy, my former boss, no, John Joseph S. Coronel.
Yes. To be ready, we have to be properly nourished, so I will not get in the way of your dinner. I would like to thank the speakers. We have Ted, Ryan, Jeremiah. Thank you to our partners, Cald, Mardi, and Dito Orlege, the secretariats of Cald and FNF, Jaja, Chelsea, PJ, and Gino, and of course, the audience. I would just like to conclude by saying that it is in your hands, the youth, to ensure that the successor generation becomes the successful generation. Because admittedly, we have committed so many mistakes, our generation, and the future is in your hands. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, everyone. All right. Thank you, Sir John Coronel, for the closing statements. And that ends tonight's discussion. Hashtag Generation Heroes, the successor generation speaks. If you want to rewatch this, it's on the Facebook pages of the Center for Liberalism and Democracy, Council of Asian Liberals and Democrats, and the Frederick Naman Foundation, Philippines. I am Lacanoy Dorado Alegre from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, and this was an honor to talk this evening. Maraming salamat. Thank you very much and have a good evening, everyone. Hello, hello.
Thank
Hello.
you. Thank you,
Hi.
everyone. That was a success. And we learned a lot from you guys, and we hope that we have inspired a lot of our youth leaders to
We're
become,
still live.
participating.
We're still
Yes.
live.
It might end at for a few minutes, but we're like it's like lagging on their end, so the live stream will end
Okay.
by around 5 minutes or so. Yeah. So yes, thank you everyone for participating. Um, if there are things that you'd like us to address with regards to this event, just tap us on at the Center for Liberalism and Democracy, and we're just an email away. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll just take the picture through the stream.
Okay.
I'll just take snippets of it, and yeah,
Take a picture. Okay, hang on.
yeah, sure. We can take a picture right now. All
Okay,
right.
sure.
Is everyone good? All right. Can I invite Miss Jaja and Miss Chelsea to open their cameras?
What about Lito?
Just for Sir Lito has already left, as well as Sir
Oh,
John.
okay.
But at least a participation from one of our members in Center for Council for Asian Liberalism and Democracy. All right. So, all right. In a count of three. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Can I take another picture with the logos? All right. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, everyone. All right.
Thanks.